welcome back to Shinlong's Fitness Journal. All right, we got a question. We got to talk about this. What does heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, and diabetes all have in common? We'll talk about it, like I said, in today's journal. All right, so here's what we got to go over. What is bodily inflammation? What are the health risks associated with it? What causes it? And what to do about it when it becomes chronic. All right, so let's start with what it is. Basically, bodily inflammation is our ability to defend and repair ourselves. It's a mechanism that responds to anything that causes you damage, irritation, or infection. It takes care of threats like germs, toxins, or injuries. The immune system kicks in and it turns on what's called inflammation. So when this happens, blood flow increases, tiny vessels get leaky, and immune cells rush to the area. White blood cells move in to attack the germs, cleans up any damage, while chemical messengers, called cytokines, we'll talk about those later, tell the body whether to turn up the response or start to calm it down. So, what are the typical signs that the body is in repair mode? Well, basically, you get heat in the area, you'll get redness, swelling, pain, and loss of function. So, these are the things you can expect when dealing with inflammation. Sometimes, especially when it's deeper inside your body, the inflammation is called low grade or chronic. It can be silent instead of obvious. The redness and the swelling, this is called chronic inflammation. It shows up as persistent fatigue or low energy fatigue, migrating aches and pains. It could be brain fog, trouble concentrating. You can have digestive issues, you can have skin changes, or you can have sleep disruption. So we can frame this like this: it's acute inflammation. That's the one that's loud, it's visible, you know what's going on. And then you have the chronic or silent inflammation. It's quiet but draining. You feel chronic inflammation as a energy and recovery problem. You don't feel it or experience it as hot and heat or swelling. All right, so for me, before my diagnosis with prediabetes at the time, this is the insulin resistance days, I was always feeling hot. Now I realized that it was my body screaming, letting me know, like, hey, you need to address some things. So moving on. Okay, what are the health risks of inflammation? So we're gonna map it out like this. First, there's something called oxidative stress that rises. When it does, it drives unhealthy cytokines to produce more inflammation, and the inflammation feeds back into more oxidative stress, creating a vicious cycle. So, what is oxidative stress? Well, oxidative stress is when an overload of free radicals, cell damaging molecules, overwhelms your antioxidant defenses. Okay, if this continues, it's going to lead to cellular, protein, and DNA damage. As far as what a cytokine is, so in particular the unhealthy cytokines, we're looking at an imbalance in overproduction of inflammatory signaling proteins, which can cause tissue damage and chronic disease, and more major drivers of aging, chronic inflammation, and conditions like cancer and diabetes and cardiovascular disease. And I'm back. So, chronic inflammation has health risks. It doesn't just leave you achy, It's quietly ruining your heart, messing with your brain, and throwing off your metabolism. So if we go further on our map, there are three major categories or conditions um, that show up, and that's cardiovascular, which is the heart and the blood vessels, neurological, your brain, spinal cord, and nerves, and metabolic. Basically your nutrient processing process. Think digestion, gathering energy, and things like that. So, what are the health risks of cardiovascular inflammation? Okay, so when it hangs around for too long, it irritates the lining inside the blood vessels, called the endothelium, making it sticky and dysfunctional. That sets off plaque buildup, which is known as atherosclerosis, that clogs arteries. And if the plaque bursts, it forms a clot, and you're looking at a heart attack or stroke. So basically, as I understand it, um, what you have is you have this buildup, you know, in the arteries, right? You have this lining, I should say. Now, when the lining becomes dysfunctional, builds up with plaque, with the atherosclerosis. When it builds up with that, inflammation causes that lining, that plaque buildup to crack. So underneath that crack, you develop a pimple. Think of it like a pimple. So the plaque cracks and floats away. It's taken care of, but it leaves behind a pimple, if you will, in the artery. That pimple is the clog that causes the heart attack or the stroke, and that's how it was explained to me and how I understand it. So hopefully that clears some things up. Now moving on, what are the neurological health risks of inflammation? Well, again, when inflammation lingers in the brain, it keeps the brain's immune cells switched on, which slowly wears down the neurons and makes it harder for your brain to repair and adapt. In time, that can show up as memory issues, cognitive decline, and in some people, it contributes to dementia, and that includes Alzheimer's. It also disrupts brain chemicals like serotonin and dopamine, which is why chronic inflammation is tied to depression, anxiety, mood swings, brain fog, and slower thinking. So it affects all of that. It's one of those things. It's no joke. That's for sure. So, yeah, moving on. And I'm back. Okay, metabolically. So metabolically, what it does, inflammation does to the metabolic system. It makes cells less responsive to insulin. So your blood sugar will stay higher, and the pancreas will continue pumping out insulin like nobody's business. As this happens, it drives you to get fat, in particular visceral belly fat. Your cholesterol and triglycerides will reach abnormal levels, and it sets the stage for metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes. So you definitely don't want that. I've experienced the metabolic syndrome in the form of type 2 diabetes, as you know. But these are all the steps that contribute and build up to it. Okay, so signs of everyday low-grade inflammation or chronic inflammation. Basically, this is what you're looking at. These are the effects of your quality of life. We're looking at ongoing fatigue, poor sleep, trouble thinking, looking at joint pain, chronic joint pain, muscle pain, stiffness, digestive issues like acid reflux, constipation, which I've experienced in the past, diarrhea, and chronic belly discomfort, which I would get all the time. As far as the belly discomfort, we'll get into it a little bit later, but that has a lot to do with your gut biome, microbiome, which is, I want to say, it is the first line of defense when it comes to fighting off chronic inflammation. So you can get unexpected weight gain or weight loss, frequent infections, skin problems like rashes and psoriasis. Also, low grade chronic inflammation, or as they call it, inflammaging, speeds up biological aging, contributing to frailty and age related diseases like heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and dementia. I can't mention this enough. And together, these inflammatory conditions account for the majority of deaths worldwide. So, they're definitely something to think of, something to consider and keep in mind, and really look into. And moving on. All right. So, now let's go over what causes the inflammation. This is the fun part. This is definitely my favorite part. We're looking at high blood sugar and eating ultra processed foods, having excess body fat, insufficient physical activity, basically not moving, being a bit overweight. That's also a factor. We also have environmental pollutants, cigarette smoke. If you live next to a factory, or if you live in the inner city, you ride the bus a lot or drive a car. Those are considerations. And last but not least would be having a very stressful environment and poor sleep quality. Okay. So we're going to start with ultra high processed foods, also called UPFs. They're industrial formulations that often contain little or no nutritional whole foods. Ingredients like hydrogenated oils, emulsifiers, and HFCS, aka high fructose corn syrup, which I avoid like the plague. A diet high in sugar and UPFs is strongly linked to over 30 adverse health conditions, including obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and other mental health disorders. This is the food. These foods are generally high in unhealthy fats, sodiums, and empty calories, while lacking essential fiber and nutrients. Common examples include processed meats. We got bacon, lunch meat, and hot dogs, all of which I like, but I had to limit that. Refined grains, white bread, cookies, pastry. Again, I used to love that stuff, had to eliminate it. Fast food. Listen, sometimes it is difficult to cook, or to get a meal in. We're just so busy. But the trick is meal prep. Meal prep, meal prep, meal prep. That way you can control what you eat. Last but not least which is what got me, is sugary drinks. In particular, colas, sports drinks, which I love. Gatorade, had to give that up. Bottled tea, that surprised me. Bottled tea has like 40 plus grams of sugars in it. Oh man. Well, anyway, all of the above promote cytokines and oxidative stress. So definitely want to minimize, if not altogether avoid, these products or that type of diet. Okay, let's talk about excess body fat and sedentary lifestyle. So that excess body fat or visceral fat that's hugging your organs, it's not just storage. It's acting like an endocrine organ. It's pumping out inflammatory signals nonstop, keeping your immune system stuck in a low-grade activated state 24/7. On top of this, we sitting around all day. It cranks up this inflammation, which then snowballs into weight gain. With the weight gain, we get blood sugar chaos and worse, inflammatory markers. The longer that it goes on, the worse it gets. So next I want to talk about the environmental pollutants. So cigarette smoke and polluted air, known as particulate matter, in particular PM 2.5. They introduce reactive particles that enter the bloodstream. That triggers oxidative stress. Okay, the release of pro-inflammatory cytokines that damage cells, and they trigger systematic inflammation in the lungs, blood vessels, and beyond. Long-term exposure to these environmental pollutants will basically are linked to inflammatory diseases like COPD, cardiovascular diseases, and some cancers. That's just in the air. Now let's get to what's probably in our kitchens right now. So, which is basically chemicals and plastics. Stuff like BPA from plastic bottles and PFAS, which are pollutants that get into the water and get everywhere. PFAS, most people get their PFAS exposure from nonstick pans, as well as those black plastic cooking utensils like the spatulas and stuff. If they're black, they're usually made from recycled like monitors, computer monitors, and they still have PFAS in them. They mess with your immune system big time. Basically, they wreak havoc on the gut barrier, so you get leaky gut, which leads to more inflammation. There's also a thing with heavy metals, lead, mercury, cadmium. They all crank up oxidative stress. They throw off gut bacteria and they stir up body-wide inflammation. They hit hard on organs like the liver and the brain, making everything worse over time. There are on the market. There are a lot of products that address metal detox. So I do know that you can sweat a lot of the heavy metals out of your body if you're exposed to them. I take hot soaks, or you can do a sauna. That also helps to help draw them out. And like I said, there are many products on the market. Many of them, as far as I know, may not be lab tested, but it can't hurt. I would do the research, because you don't want a lot of heavy metal floating in your body. That's for sure. That contributes to inflammation. All right, and here we go. So we're going to be talking about chronic stress and sleep. So got a little animation coming. There we go. All right, so now here's how this works. Stress and poor sleep, they team up to wreak havoc on our bodies. It's like a non-stop false alarm that messes with your immune system. It keeps those inflammatory cytokines cranked up all the way for low-grade body-wide inflammation. Also, sleep inflammation keep feeding each other in a vicious cycle where crappy sleep ramps up the inflammation, and that inflammation makes it even harder to go to sleep and get good rest. So over time, this just messes with you, and it starts building up to chronic diseases like heart problems, diabetes, and autoimmune issues like lupus and rheumatoid arthritis, plus neurological hits like depression, anxiety, brain fog, cognitive decline, and higher risk for dementia. Basically, consistent sleep loss per night significantly raises C-reactive proteins, or CRP, levels, a key blood marker for systematic inflammation that independently predicts higher risk of heart attacks. I highly recommend talking to your doctor about a C-reactive protein test, as this is an excellent indicator, one of the top metrics rather, for measuring inflammation, which again is an indicator of a risk for heart attacks or stroke. So this is one of those biomarkers that did not make it on my radar until I began researching the topic of inflammation. But now that I know about it, I personally will be asking my doctor about it. And when I get the tests done and get the results back, I will definitely make a journal about that. All right, moving on. Okay, here's one for the sleepy heads out there. All right, have you ever heard of the glymphatic system? Okay, it's like your brain's overnight janitor crew. It sweeps out toxic junk like beta amyloids during deep sleep, not light sleep. But if you're skimping on sleep, this cleanup fails. The toxins build up and spark neural inflammation And you guessed it, that puts you at risk for Alzheimer's and other brain issues. So, we definitely want to get a good night's sleep and clear our brains out. Not a bad thing at all. All right. So, one last thing. Also, poor sleep contributes to autoimmune conditions, like I mentioned before, like rheumatoid arthritis, like lupus. It's both a symptom and a trigger, increasing the inflammation that causes joint swelling and crushing fatigue, while also messing with your gut microbiome to create leaky gut, like we went over. It lets the toxins leak into the bloodstream that fuels even more inflammation because your immune system is trying to fight that off. Oh yeah, one last thing. Recent studies reveal that one night's of sleep deprivation can reprogram immune stem cells at the genetic level, creating a kind of cellular memory that boosts inflammation and raises your risk of inflammatory disorders. So even after you catch up on sleep, the changes tend to stick around. So that's just something to think about for sure. Okay, so what can we do about inflammation? That's the question. Let's get into that. So basically, you can lower chronic inflammation mainly through consistent changes on how you eat, how you move, how you sleep, and how you manage stress. You want to think of it as building an overall anti inflammatory lifestyle, not looking for one magic food or supplement, because it ain't out there. Trust me. Okay, let's start with sleep. There are things that I do and you can do, and that I recommend. Number one, use a sleep tracker. I covered some of these devices in a previous journal, and I will link that in the description. Number two, go to bed and wake up around the same time. Consistent sleep schedule. Your body gets used to the routine, it's predictable, and it can function a lot better because it knows what to do, when to start cleaning out, things like that. Relaxation before bed, a warm bath or shower, or read a book. This lowers cortisol levels, so lowering cortisol, always a good thing. Um, Optimize deep sleep. And this one, for a long time, I I didn't do, to the best way I could do it. Like, for example, I would drink coffee well into the afternoon, thinking that, I'm pretty much acclimated to caffeine. Nope. So nowadays, my cutoff time for coffee is usually in the afternoon. Afternoon. Maybe I'll push it maybe 1 o'clock, maybe 2 o'clock p.m. It's the latest I'll drink coffee. Um, I don't drink alcohol, but if you do, you want to avoid alcohol and you want to avoid heavy meals and a lot of screen time about 3 hours before going to bed. That way you'll hit the deep stages of sleep. Um, you can get high quality sleep also in a cool room that's nice and dark and quiet. For me, I like to play water sounds like running streams and brooks. I love that. It knocks me right out. Next up, what can we do about inflammation? Well, this is talking about stress. So, this one's a little tricky because everybody's lifestyle is unique. Everybody's circumstances is different. So we'll paint this in broad strokes. They got research out there that says that we target nutrition, physical activity, lifestyle habits, and stress management. We can directly lower these biological markers, these biomarkers. Let's start with nutrition changes, nutrition modifications, basically anti-inflammatory eating. You want to emphasize borrow from the Mediterranean diet. They have a pretty good system over there. So the Mediterranean diet focuses on whole plant-based foods like leafy greens, spinach, kale, berries, nuts, seeds, things like that. Also, you want to increase your omega-3 fatty acids. I know there's supplements out there for that, but I recommend getting it from Whole Foods instead of getting it from necessarily from supplements. If you can, if your diet allows, eat fatty fish like salmon, mackerel, and sardines. Do this at least twice a week. You can probably supplement the omega 3s with a lot of olive oil. Trying to think of what else off the top of my head that'll give you a good degree of omega 3s that's plant based. It's kind of difficult to find. I'll do some research. I'll put some notes in the journal of the video of the journal. All right, so you know these products, these omega 3 fatty acids, they disrupt the production of inflammation causing chemicals. So that is a plus. That's a good way to fight back. Also, we can use herbs and spices that lessen inflammatory. Like the famous one is turmeric, with some black pepper to activate it. Ginger and garlic, as well as cinnamon. They also have anti-inflammatory properties, along with rosemary. So those rosemary potatoes, huh? Man, they were helping me out. All right, so we got to cut out the bad foods, the trigger foods that trigger inflammation. We want to drastically reduce carbohydrates, white bread, pasta, fried foods, sugary drinks, processed snacks with trans fats in them. We don't want any trans fats. I did cover that in a previous video talking about macros, so I'll drop that in the link too in the description. Um, Try time restricted eating. I do that all the time. Do that every day. So I limit meals to a particular time. It could be, you can only eat in a window of 8 to 10 hours. I think it's also known as intermittent fasting. But basically, I eat in between the hours of 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. That's when I eat. I don't eat after that. Maybe a snack every once in a while if I'm trying to get my macros up, if I need a little bit more protein. But intermittent fasting, slash time restricted eating is the way to go. That helps reduce inflammation, and it has been helping me a lot. Also, you can support the gut. I remember we said that your gut biome is like your first line of defense against inflammation and other things. So take probiotics, consume fermented foods like sauerkraut, yogurt, Greek yogurt, kefir. Kefir, it takes some getting used to, but I don't mind. I don't mind it every now and then. Stress-induced leaky gut is a major source of systemic inflammation. Also, your lifestyle habits. Physical activity. Engage in regular exercise, moderate exercise. Nothing too crazy. Aim for about 130 minutes a week. That's about 2.5 hours roughly. So, walking, brisk walking, swimming, cycling, if you got a bike, do that for 30 minutes at a stretch. So if you do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right, for example, Monday 30 minutes, maybe 35 minutes of walking, physical activity. Wednesday 30 minutes, and by Friday that's your 130 minutes of activity, easy peasy. A little bit more than that. So yeah, it can be done. It can definitely be done. You know, Avoid over exercising though. Yeah. So exercise is going to cause inflammation. Okay. So, however, that is going to be the acute inflammation. It's not going to be the chronic one. But we can over exercise and overdo it. So, just be careful not to over exercise. I'm guilty of it. I've done it plenty of times before. Your body will tell you. You will be warm all over. You will not have any energy. That's because your body's in recovery mode. So, yeah, you want to avoid that. All right, target visceral fat. Losing excess abdominal fat, which is metabolically active and produces inflammatory chemicals, can significantly lower systematic inflammation. Incorporate massage. Do self massage. You have one of those massage guns, which I do, and I recommend them. They're phenomenal. Massage therapy can help reduce inflammation at a cellular level, and it improves circulation. So recent studies have shown. All right, so that was physically active lifestyle. Now let's talk about habits. I won't harp on this too much because I know. I'll just say that for all my friends out there who are smokers. Basically, quit smoking. Tobacco smoke is a powerful pro-inflammatory agent. Quitting immediately reduces oxidative stress and inflammation. When you smoke cigarettes, those particulate matters, 2.5, you're inhaling that directly into your lungs. If you're a secondhand smoker, you're getting all of that directly into your lungs. Period. Growing up, my mom was a smoker. Um, sure, it affected me. I thought I had asthma. I grew up with asthma and everything. Come to find out, not so much. It wasn't the asthma, it was being a secondhand smoker. She was a great mom, but she loved her cigarettes. Next up, limit alcohol. I'm not a drinker myself, but alcohol is an inflammatory and it disrupts the gut microbiome. So limit it to no more than one drink per day for women or two for men. Now, that one I know for a lot of people will be a tough one, but to your health, right? Okay, this one I cannot believe made the radar, but I did the research and brush your teeth. Brushing twice a day and flossing daily prevents bacteria from gum disease. The gum disease known as gingivitis. Okay, I had to mention that. So, from entering the bloodstream and causing body-wide inflammation. Uh, this one, in brush in the morning, brush in the evening, definitely do that. I rinse a lot. I'll brush, but I'll definitely do a rinse, a mouth rinse. Next up is reduce exposure to chemicals. If you can, use non-toxic household cleaners or homemade cleaners, that you make yourself to avoid products containing BPA. Remember that non-stick I was talking about earlier. Also, that the black cookware. Also, you avoid using pesticides if you can. All of those are toxic. As far as stress management goes, um, active stress management. So, daily activities like meditation, yoga, tai chi, um, practicing mindfulness have been shown to lower cortisol levels and reduce inflammatory activity, um, particularly in individuals with high psychological distress. Um, for us men, high cortisol levels lower testosterone levels, which can have negative physical impacts for sure. In particular to our health. I don't need to say too much more on that. So basically, no one should be dealing with elevated stress levels, but men in particular, like we gotta learn to chill. We gotta learn to zen, zen out for our health, for our physical health, because cortisol reduces testosterone, which is not good, especially if you're an older male. Spend some time in nature. Go for short walks in the park. Enjoy those open spaces. They've been shown to lower the inflammatory markers like CRP. So that's good. Okay, this one, it took me decades to learn this one, but you want to prioritize your social connection. Um, Maintain strong, positive relationships with good supporting people. Um, people who are encouraging or people who are just not stressed out. This combats the overactivity of the nervous system and that leads to inflammation. I have friends, we always like to debate and it would get serious, but now I'm in my older years, I don't enjoy that. So we get together, we have a good time and laugh, and that's that. Which brings me to the next point: spontaneous laughter. Genuine laughter also reduces cortisol levels. It also lowers C-reactive proteins and or CRPs. I mean. All right. So let's see what we got next. Some takeaways. Okay, guys. So here we go. Let's start with first takeaways: inflammation. Okay. Inflammation is our body's natural healing tool, but when it lingers too long. It's triggered and lingers too long. It sparks major health risks like heart disease, diabetes, depression, and cancer. Okay, sugary drinks and ultra processed foods They give us extra fat. Plus, if we have no exercise, the toxins, the stress, and bad sleep, that all leads to chronic inflammation. So we definitely want to check that. Okay, next up on the takeaway, inflammatory markers like C-reactive proteins are good metrics for measuring low-grade inflammation. So definitely ask your doctor or medical professional about a CRP test. Like I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go get mine done, and when I do, I will definitely share the procedure, and I'll definitely share the results with you guys to see what happened with it, see how inflamed I am. All right. Lastly, what I want to mention is that there is no magic fix, no magic pill for lowering chronic inflammation. It's basically through, you know, consistent changes, in eating and in exercise and in sleep and in stress management. You got this. You can do it. It's going to take time, and you can do it one step at a time. I'm doing it one step at a time, and I feel really optimistic. So basically, that's all I have for now. I will be going back into this issue step by step in the future journals, just talking about the different ways to mitigate and reduce inflammation, starting with stress management and working my way through. I may save the diet for last, just because, again, everyone's lifestyle and dietary needs are different. So if I come across a generic diet that can apply to anyone that also reduces stress, I would definitely make a journal about that for sure. So that's all I got. I hope, I hope this makes sense. I hope it brings to light the seriousness of inflammation and inflammatory factors. I know personally, I've dealt with chronic inflammation, and I know personally it has led me down the path of some pretty bad health risks. So I am course correcting, but now that I'm aware, I know what I'm looking for, I know what I'm doing, I'm making the adjustments. So, like I said, that's all I have for today. You know the routine. Drop a comment if you have any questions or suggestions. And of course, please like and subscribe. And remember, identify your adversaries, commit to your adherence, and take back your health and vitality. Thanks again for watching. See you in the next one.